Well, good morning, everybody, and I'm coming to you today from Williamsburg, Virginia. I'm over here for just a meeting this morning, but I bring that up because tonight I'll be flying home, and I'll be flying home during my normal time during which I prepare and then put on YouTube the long-range in-depth analysis, so it'll come out to you a little bit later tonight. But one of the big things we're going to be talking about has been the consistency in the models predicting this kind of westward shift of the big ridge that was sitting over the Mid-South and has now moved over the Four Corner States in the Southern Plains. This is really giving way to an active Canadian storm track, and I'll talk in just a moment about what I think that rainfall is going to do for the ridge riding storms that are going to come over the top of this. But over the weekend, we got to talk about two big things. The first, I'll start off with some severe weather. This was a video here that was taken in southern Saskatchewan, where you're in a field full of peas that was just absolutely ripped to shreds by hail that hail that went through that area. And the storms, by the way, the video credit here goes to Benjamin, just a great video of what that damage looked like. But I also want to show you what some of those storms look like. This is from Mitch and Stuffs. That's his Twitter handle. But he was out chasing some of those storms over the weekend in the Canadian prairie. And just an absolutely breathtaking view of some of those supercells. But what we have to get to, the second part of the story, is how was the precipitation delivered? Because while we were monitoring the hail and these storms and the ones that went right through parts of central Nebraska, and a reminder, if you need a hail report for a field, I have access to that data and I can send you that information. But with these storms also came quite a bit of rainfall for certain places. So we continue to see here the active southwestern monsoon, a lot of isolated storms producing locally heavy rainfall. Here's the storms that race through southern Saskatchewan into Manitoba. Throughout much of the central and northern plains, isolated storms, some of them severe. But the southern plains into pockets of the mid-south and even throughout the southeast, we missed out on this weekend rain. What a lot of folks were watching so carefully were the rains that were coming through parts of the central and eastern Corn Belt. Now, parts of Iowa and southern Minnesota missed this, and so did this region right in through here, stretching from west central to kind of east central Illinois. But north of that, northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, southern Illinois, back up to this part of Missouri, and then take a look at the rains for parts of Kentucky. Heavy rains throughout pockets of Indiana and Ohio, where we still have flood watches out in this area today. Some places had over 8 inches of rainfall. So we need to just look at the haves and the have-nots here in terms of total accumulated precipitation. But that's your weekend right there. As we go forward in this forecast, just want to make sure you know where to access all of this. My website, Nutrien's website, agweather.com, ag-wx.com. You come to this site, you have access to all the maps that I produce, including the European model. But if you want to see those precipitation numbers, you can come up here and go to any city in the country and get a look at the actual values for that location. Or if you like the maps, just come down here, click on Recent Precipitation Maps. And if you go to that link right there, you'll get access to all of our precipitation maps, which you see here. Now, on our site, we do have, of course, the daily all hazards weather map. And the main story is probably going to be the excessive heat building throughout the plains, which will be sustained for several days. This is that flood watch over in the Ohio River Valley. And on the backside of all of this, we're watching for some very strong winds coming out of parts of Montana. But if I had to just distill this down into your next 7 days, these two maps from the report today really kind of show you what's going on. So let's take a look here at the next 3 days. Severe weather threat right along the U.S.-Canada border today, which moves tomorrow on Tuesday into the upper Midwest. And by Wednesday, we're going to see that severe weather threat moving over, this part of the Ohio Valley, getting into New England. And this is where we still have the storms moving through this morning. But the dominance of that ridge produces very hot temperatures throughout the plains. But you'll see the change in temperature across the northwest and northern plains. It's going to really flip-flop here at the beginning of this week. But this precipitation pattern is really what we're going to be paying attention to for the next 3 days. Now, getting out there day 3 through 7, that's the 21st through the 24th, I'm going to have to keep an eye on the extent of the ridge riding storms here. We do expect it to be quite hot in the plains around that ridge, but given the position and the way it flattens out, we could see better rains through this section of the country. Models will perform terribly on this, trying to predict where those ridge riding storms will be, but there's good northwest flow, and that's what I'm watching most carefully. So the WPC this morning issued this outlook for the next 7 days in terms of total accumulated precipitation. And you notice that from Texas over here to Illinois and then north, probably about Nebraska, there's going to be a large area that sees very hot temperatures, especially farther to the west here, but misses out on the more widespread rainfall. That Canadian storm track is really quite obvious, and we're going to see each one of these lows kind of pull through parts of New England, delivering rains that are much needed here in New England. Also, continue to expect daily scattered convection across the southeast, all the way back to the lower Mississippi River Valley. But I'll tell you, one side of it much drier than the other. The European model, I think, captures this well too. I love to show you these maps. These are the next. This is the next 10 days of the probability of getting more than an inch of rainfall. And the complement to that is to say, well, what's the probability of getting less than a half inch of rainfall? And that's the map that you see here. So this area down here in the southern plains is of greatest risk as we go forward into this next 10 plus day time period. And that's been where the risk has been for a while. By the way, if you read the report today, I did include all the soil moisture maps and the last 30 days ranks maps on temperature and precipitation. But I did want to point one more thing out before we start talking about temperature. The precipitation amounts we do see in the models, like what you see in southern Minnesota and Iowa here, forecast for late this week and this weekend, I just want to let you know the models are going to bounce around considerably on this. But take note of where it's dry, and then how the models are bringing those storms over the ridge and then really putting them into eastern Corn Belt, parts of the Mid-South, the eastern side of the Mid-South, getting down into the southeastern part of the United States. It's this region through here where we continue to have our greatest risk of staying drier. And that's where it's been for the last 30 days. There are some places in Oklahoma and Arkansas, southern Missouri, Texas that have not measured rainfall in over 40 days. We're going to see this map change a lot when the new update comes out tomorrow, especially here in Indiana, when they include those Sunday rains. Remember, these maps are always a day old because of quality control. Okay, let's finish this up by talking temperatures. There's today's highs, hot in South Dakota. I'll be here on Wednesday going out to Pierre, and that heat that's coming through here is just incredible. But watch as we go from Monday into Tuesday. A little bit of a break of some cooler air, but we're going to be seeing 106 to 110 parts of Kansas, down here at Oklahoma and Texas. And then as we go into Wednesday, the heat stays on in these areas all the way through the rest of this forecast time period. See the heat in the Central Plains? That's where the ridge that's centered over the Great Basin is putting high pressure and high temperatures. It goes out there about as far as we can see. Our 5-day sliding window of temperatures, you get some relief across the northern tier of the U.S., some relief over the southeast, but the heat just stays on in the southern plains. And with the retreat northward of the jet stream, we start to actually see some warmer conditions sticking around for a while in the Pacific Northwest. So a lot of upper 90s showing up here. First time all year that we've actually seen sustained above normal temperatures. As we play this out, though, to the very end of July and the start of August, what we do not see here is widespread cooler conditions coming in from an overall pattern change. And you know the big topics we've been kind of discussing that could really change that up. We featured that in last week's videos. So from there, I'm just going to show you it's not the only place in the world dealing with heat. This is the next 10 days across Europe and Western Russia. And that heat wave we talked about last week coming into the central parts of Europe is still on, very hot compared to normal and very dry in that area. That even extends all the way over to parts of Ukraine as well. So very hot, very dry throughout much of Europe, putting a lot of pressure on their crops. Again, if you get a chance to read the report, please read through the part I put in there about the new update from Columbia University. Their long-range forecast for August, September, and October is shown here for temperature and precipitation. But I kind of talk about some of the caveats of looking at these maps and how to distill them down, plus a quick discussion about the hurricane season. Okay, I will talk to you again very late tonight for those of you that watch my in-depth report. And if not, we'll catch you again in the morning. Thanks.